The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazingly solid. Amazing Spider-Man 2. The sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man, directed by Mark Webb. And Jamin, we're going to throw it right to you because you have some very intriguing thoughts on this movie. What did you think of The Amazing Spider-Man Part 2?
Well, I really enjoyed most of this movie. I thought that it was a very solid movie. I think it did a decent job of being a sequel to the first movie. I did think that coming into the movie, obviously, that the three villains wouldn't work very well. It seemed to me like they did do a decent job of it, but I think the worst part of this movie was that kind of confusing aspect of the villains, and that kind of stopped a little bit of the movie for me. But I did really enjoy Andrew Garfield in this movie as Spider-Man and his return and his connection with Gwen Stacy. That was really, really good. What did you think?
Yeah, Andrew Garfield is just the picture-perfect Spider-Man for me. He fits the nerd mentality. He doesn't quite look like a high schooler, but he fits the nerd profile, and he just acts like him. He's all cocky. And Emma Stone and him, of course, they have great chemistry. It's fun to watch them on screen together. And then we get to the villains, which they were entertaining. It was good action scenes, but again, the plot was mixed with them. But let's talk about the acting from the villains. Jamie Foxx and Dane DeHaan play Electro and the Green Goblin. I thought there was a wasted concept on the Green Goblin. I really liked the actor as him, but I thought they could have done more with him. They spent a lot of time on Electro. Electro was the main villain out of the three. They gave him a whole backstory, which I thought it was a little unnecessary. He didn't have as good of a backstory as the Green Goblin. What did you think about the backstory for the villains?
Well, they did do a pretty big backstory on Electro, but I think you kind of needed that just to see kind of where Electro came, because not a lot of us were familiar with Electro unless you read kind of the comics. As for Green Goblin, obviously we've kind of seen him before in the previous Spider-Man series. But yeah, I agree. I think that they did do kind of a weird matching with that. But overall, I think they did a decent job with the villains, but it wasn't perfect, and it was just kind of confusing.
And Rhino was there for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're a Rhino fan, he's there for a minute or two. Honestly, he didn't have to be in this movie. He was thrown in there to lead up to the third one. But yeah, without the Rhino, you really just had two villains, which I thought that would make it better since it was only them two, but it was still a little confusing with what they wanted to do with the villains.
Yeah, for me, I didn't fall in love with any of these villains, as I thought I did. I thought I really, really liked Electro, or I really, really liked the Green Goblin, but I didn't really fall in love with either of them. And that's kind of a problem, because you want to be able to fall in love with the villains. You look at the Avengers or something like that, you really fall in love with Loki, for example.
Yeah, he did. You really root for him, even though you shouldn't be. You still laugh at him and you enjoy him on the screen. I could have fallen in love with the Green Goblin, but again, he wasn't explored as much. He's probably going to be in the third one. But since they decided to just push Electro and leave Green Goblin as a secondary villain, I think it could have been flipped for me. But I agree, you needed the backstory for Electro because most people hadn't really heard of him or known where he came from.
Yeah, I liked Electro almost before he became Electro
it's just
more,
goofy.
because I think it was
45
funny.
minutes are just goofy and funny, and introducing him is he's just a nerd that doesn't get along with anybody. Everyone just disrespects him. So yeah, it's a good setup for him. Then he becomes Electro, and his whole goal is I want people to know my name, I want to be famous. And then that finally happens as Electro, but then Spider-Man steals his spotlight, and that starts the feud between them. But off the villains for a minute, the whole overall plot of the movie and just how it sways, I liked the overall movie, but I thought it swayed from, it was a comedy, then action, romantic comedy, then drama. I thought it was a little too wishy-washy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can kind of see that, but again, I really like the connection between those two characters. I actually enjoyed that part of it. I think that was almost, I thought it was, most people would think that part would be the boring part. I actually enjoyed it. I think it was kind of interesting to see those two interact and have their ups and downs, but they really do have a very good connection, and it's probably the best part of the movie, in all honesty.
Yeah, those relationships, usually that's the down part of superhero movie. You're like, come on, let's go, action scene. But no, they did a great job of keeping you compelled with the whole storyline throughout the movie. So what are you going to go ahead and rate this thing, Jamin?
I think this is a very, very solid movie. I definitely would recommend it. But, it has tons of flaws in this movie. It wasn't perfect by all means, especially on the villain side, but it was a very good movie. I can't quite give it an 8, but I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Very, very decent, but again, probably a little bit under what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so overall, I love the action scenes. The action looked great. The whole movie looked and felt great. It was just the pieces in between that didn't quite fit together with the villains and just the overall feel of the movie. But again, I really enjoyed this movie. You should definitely pay full price to see this at the theater. It's a theater movie. It's very enjoyable. Just from the enjoyment factor, I'm going to get it to an 8 out of 10 for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So what did you guys think? What are your reactions about this movie? Some people are loving it. Some people are hating it. We're kind of in the middle. So what did you guys think? J&J Reviews?
Sign out.